4. And we're about to complete another outstanding week of conversations on the Sportsline Podcast. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Hey, really appreciate the wealth of positive feedback we've been getting, especially this week. It certainly motivates us and the team to keep doing a good job for you, keep entertaining you. Hey, tell you, a good friend of the Golden Horseshoe, and if you sit on the west side stands at Tim Hortons Field, you're pretty familiar with this fella. In the television sports business, hard work and a good attitude can only take you so far. In the end, passion, preparation, and talent will take you to the highest level. For well over a decade, Matthew Scianitti has displayed an ability to report or write about the biggest sporting events on the planet. CFL, NBA, NFL, and the Olympics all checked off the list. It's either CBC Sports, the National Post, and currently TSN. In addition to hosting or reporting from the sidelines at CFL games, get ready for his contributions as Canada prepare to host and play the World Cup in 2026. Matthew Scianitti, always a pleasure to get to you here on the Sportsline Podcast. And I know it's been a real busy time for you. First of all, how are you doing?
Well, Bubba, the check is in the mail. I'm glad that you read everything on the script that I told you to read. So I appreciate that. That was really humbling, my friend. Pleasure to be here. Absolute pleasure.
You know, we always like to be positive on this podcast, and we do like to dig into some, tough conversations at time, but kind of walk down that road. It has only been a little over a week at TSN. One of your leaders, one of your original leaders in the newsroom as well, too, Darren Dutchyshen passing. Just a little bit on, what you experienced with Dutchy and, kind of what's going on in the newsroom right now. It's got to be kind of a sad place.
Yeah, you know what, Bubba, you were recounting what has happened over the last week. I had to take a moment and take a breath because it is still an emotional time for everybody. And the thing about Dutchy is that everyone experienced him in their own way, but everyone, as you've been hearing countless times on social media, they've all been saying the same thing. This is a guy who, no matter where you saw him, he was the same person. And it's funny, I put this on social media, and I said it to Toronto Star columnist Bruce Arthur. I spent most of my time around Darren at the gym. For those who know us both, that wouldn't surprise them, but I moved to Liberty Village, which is just right by BMO Field, in 2014, and Darren went to the same gym for a long time before I was there, and then I saw him for years, and I would see him every day, and the same thing, he would always just smile and say, "Hey, shooter," and just go on about what was happening that day in sports, or what his shift had been like at the station. But I watched him keenly in how he interacted with people. And every day, every time I saw him at the gym, people would walk up to him and gladly. They wouldn't be hesitant or nervous. It would be the biggest smile, because this is a guy who represented exactly what TSN is. I mean, the energy, the positivity, as you say, but the passion for what he did. Jennifer Hesger said it best. Nobody did highlights better than Darren Dutchyshen in this country. Certainly Jay Onrait does them differently and has done it incredibly alongside Dan O'Toole for as many years as he did. But Darren Dutchyshen was doing it since 1995 and was the same guy that day as he was, very unfortunately, the last time. And unexpectedly, nobody knew it would be the last time that he was on. But I watched him, the way he treated people. And I've said it countless times. And it's something I think I'm repeating constantly in my own head, which is, we are so lucky. I feel like the luckiest guy in the world. And it's something that I think embodies his legacy. And I'm very, very happy that I got to spend the smallest amount of time outside of the newsroom with him. But I share the same emotions that so many do right now, which is you appreciate the time that you spent with him. You feel so lucky that you spent that time with him. And you're profoundly sorry that he's gone. But to watch the energy and positivity and the love that he faced an unspeakable, unimaginable situation in his life, to know that he approached it that way. I'll steal a line from Rod Smith in his last recollection of a meeting with Dutchy, which is, "We're sportscasters. Get over it. Just have a great time." And I look at the summer ahead, and I'm really trying to live that the way that Darren would.
It's amazing to me because we have such a small sports market in this country, and it's certainly getting smaller. competitive at times as well too, but when a warrior like him, a friend like him goes down, I did 45 seconds a minute on him on my newscast out here, because I know people out in Burlington and Niagara and Hamilton, they're well aware of his work, and it's like we lost a good friend way too soon. And I know we say that a zillion times, but at 57 years old, and a guy that had that kind of spirit for what we do in this industry, it's a tough one, but as Dutch would love it, we would love to move on and talk sports, so let's do so. And we talk about careers there, and it's interesting to me. I always say that I wanted to do either one of two things in my life as a child. I either wanted to be an air traffic controlman or a sportscaster. Well, it appears you wanted to be either a graphic designer or a sports reporter. What happened, and why did you walk down the road of sports?
Yeah, it's funny. I go back all the way to grade 9. I took I didn't take the kind of English courses that you would take to get to where I am right now. I loved art. I loved comic books. I had a drafting table. I would spend hours and hours of just drawing and certainly had the smallest ability, but I think I kind of overshot what I thought my potential was going to be. And I remember in grade 9, we had to write a short story, to take people down this road. I had a teacher, as I think many people are lucky, and sometimes when they decide what they're going to do, it's based upon really the lovely mentorship that you receive from a teacher. I had it from a teacher named Ms. Hackett in grade 9 in St. Elizabeth Catholic High School in Vaughan, Ontario, in Thornhill, and she said to me when I wrote a short story, she goes, "You may be in the wrong class here," and that basically that moment set me off on the path I am right now. Over time, as much as I had dreamt of, I want to go to the Ontario College of Art and Design, and I want to be a graphic designer, and I love, had maybe the faintest of hopes that I would become an inker or a drafter for a comic book. I knew as the more and more time I spent with writing, understanding the craft of writing and reading and finding joy in it, it changed my life, and here I sit today, and I kind of think, it's one of those sliding doors moments that everybody has, where it's like, you can go down one path or another, and I'm very lucky that I went down this path, because not that I don't, I'm sure I would have approached art if I had gone into it with the same kind of vigor and work ethic that I try to approach this job, but I'm very, very, very fortunate that this is where I ended up. But it's amazing. I think back now, all those years ago, and thinking it was that moment of a teacher, as it happens so often with students, who said to me, who just kind of directed me in another lane, and here I am. So it's funny how those little moments in life can change everything.
Well, and your writing certainly comes out in your features, and certainly the way you report, and that was your early background, but you do get to CBC Sports, and you get to the national stuff and TSN. Do you even remember that first report, that first stand-up?
I do. I can give you one report in particular. I was when the NHL and the IIHF were meeting to discuss whether or not the NHLs would play in the Olympics. This would have been the 2014 Olympics. I had just started TSN, so they were doing this in 2013. One of my first trips was actually to New York City, in which I was on the Avenue of the Americas, right outside where the NHL head offices are. And anyone who's ever had a camera in front of them in Manhattan will know very quickly that camera is surrounded by people. And as someone who was coming from print journalism, who had very, very, very little understanding of what TV actually was, 32 takes later, I was still very much, and I can close my eyes and remember it, I was at a point where I was like, get me the blankety blank out of here. So thankfully, I got to 32, and that was it. But I also think about the first time I reported for a major event, which would have been the Daytona 500, and they had a crash in the nighttime race on Saturday, and it was a bad crash, and it blew apart the safer barrier. And I remember all of a sudden being a kid who was just going down there to kind of get his feet wet and understand a big event and how TSN wants the event to be done. And two things happened. One, I found myself all of a sudden thrust on national television with, God bless her, Sandy Rinaldi, in my ear, basically coaching me through a live hit on national TV, which was like I think I probably did it like this for 90 seconds. But the second one that always brings me back down to this is just the least important, most important thing is when Jimmy Johnson won that race in 2013. I was very, very lucky because we're rights holders, to be in Victory Lane. Tons of people, a mass of people, and hot, just humid, just like your skin is sticking to you. Or sorry, your clothes are just sticking to your skin, I should say. And I was in Victory Lane, went underneath the velvet rope trying to find my cameraman, went down, my pants stuck to my leg. I stood up, and the seat of my pants just ripped. So basically, all of a sudden, like anyone who was looking would have noticed right away. And my cameraman, Dean Willers, I went up to him and I was kind of like, okay, what are we doing now? Because I was just kind of like thinking fast on my feet and overwhelmed and stressed. And I turned around, I'm like, where do we got to go? And he put his hands on my shoulders and was just like, stop. Your boxers are just basically blowing in the wind. Like the seat of your pants is just ripped open. And he goes, just stick with me the whole time. And I was like, that would have been fine in a mass of people. No one would have noticed. But then we were going to have an interview with Jimmy Johnson. And that interview happened to be not in Victory Lane, but in the media center, which was like several football field lengths away. So all of a sudden I'm walking around the infield of Daytona International Speedway with my boxers just blowing up the back of my pants. And I remember then walking to the media center, and God bless Dean Willers, he was trying to take care of me, and I don't even remember talking. I was just like this. I'm living like one of those horrible nightmares that you have, and finally he positions the camera by a wall. Jimmy Johnson comes out. Okay, I'm going to do this interview. No one's going to be the wiser. Then he comes out with his wife and daughter, who proceed to stand right behind me. So the whole time, his wife and daughter were probably going, who is this clown with his boxers hanging out of his? So of all the things that I've done, those early years, those early days were incredible, humbling moments to make me realize and kind of have the kind of positive energy. Because after that happens, Bubba, there's very few things that can happen to you. And I've had bad things happen to me, bad live hits and all that. So, now that I'm very, very lucky that I still have a job, I try to approach it with just kind of energy and positivity and be like, man, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, because really those first few months were not good.
Well, the funny thing is, and we all know it, TV, radio, print, we've all had experiences like that, generally in the beginnings of our career. And thank you so much, because you didn't need to share that with us, but I'm glad you did. I didn't even know that. That's a spectacular story there, Matt. Hey, there are so many people here in the Golden Horseshoe. They have seen you on the likes of the sidelines at Tim Hortons Field. And before we get into the Ticats, because I'd like to ask you a couple of things about the CFL. One consistent thing with you, and it's funny that you talk about your dressing and your clothes, you have a sort of, I would say, a good fashion sense. And one thing about you is your shoe wear. It is well renowned that you are a fan. I don't know if you're getting paid by Converse, but you love the Chuck Taylors. First of all, how many pairs of Chuck Taylors do you have, and where did this all start?
I should have positioned my camera. If I'd leaned, I don't think you can see it. Actually, you can. Just over the back of me, a little bit right there is a wall of Chucks. I have 25 pairs right now. I had 75 at one point.
What?
Yeah, it's I kind of, when I was by myself during COVID, I kind of looked around these shoes, and I didn't know when we'd be getting out of lockdown. So I was like, well, I don't know if I need this many pairs of shoes right now. I don't know if I was having my own kind of self-reflection. Anyway, I donated many of them. And a lot of the pairs I have now, where I'm very, very lucky to have them designed by some incredible artists. Maybe that kind of appreciation for graphic art is kind of now extended into my shoe wear, because some of the work, I'm very, very lucky. I've had pairs done for a number of the major events that I've worked, and they're the keepsakes. They're the things I'm selfish that I keep for me. But what I love about wearing Chucks is, when I came to TSN and was learning how to wear a suit the right way, presentation on camera, how you look, I didn't feel comfortable wearing like wingtip or Oxford shoes or any kind of dress shoe. It just didn't feel like me. And because I was dealing, obviously, as I just told you, with all these different kinds of nerves, I decided that I wanted to wear something that was authentically me. And TSN went ahead and very, very lucky. They paid for my suits. They also paid for my shoes. And then I guess accidentally on purpose, when I picked them up from the then stylist for TSN, I left those shoes on the side of the road. And all I had with me that day were Converse shoes. And I happened to be reporting on the Leafs and the New Jersey Devils that night. And it was hilarious because I walked up to the gondola there and was wearing a black suit, red tie, white shirt, and this red tie pointing down to my red chucks. And a executive with the New Jersey Devils at the time, who was not Lou Lamoriello, but I imagine he would have given me the same kind of stink eye, gave me a stink eye for what I was wearing. But I see now, and I don't claim at all. I do not claim any kind of ownership of how other people, the style, and other people wearing sneakers with their different kinds of outfits. But I feel kind of vindicated because I look now and everyone's wearing sneakers with, all kinds of formal wear or informal wear. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I didn't invent the trend by any means, not at all. But at least I knew that I was on the inside curve a little bit. So, maybe I'll take a little bit of credit for that.
Well, you can't take credit. I will anoint you because you were the first I've ever seen, at least in this country, to do that. I used to see a lot of guys in the NBA doing it, and they got called out a lot for doing that. For how can you wear a $1,200 suit with, a pair of $100 sneakers? But boy, you're right.
I will say this very quickly. The most gratifying moment that I've ever had was the 2016 Eastern Conference semifinal when the Raptors were facing the Heat. And I don't often do, I don't get starstruck because I'm just kind of like, these are people too. But I was wearing Batman chucks and we were in a scrum with Dwayne Wade, and Dwayne Wade walked right past me and would not start the scrum until he told me how great my shoes were.
Nice.
And at that point,
nice.
I felt 10,000 feet tall. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And it's, I think in this job, Bubba, and knowing your incredible personality too, there's that authenticity. You have to be who you are in order to find some staying power. And as you said, an industry that keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. If you're not authentically who you are, and the people on the other side of the camera, the audience, the people in the stands, the people you interact with cannot see that you're legitimately being who you are, you will not be successful. You will not have a long career in this business. So if there's one little bit of credit I'll take is I've tried my best to be authentically who I am, not just in how I treat people, but in the clothes I wear.
Let's talk Ticats here, and we know you follow the Argonauts and the Ticats very, very closely for pretty much the entire season for TSN. Is it fair to say that how Bo Levi Mitchell goes, this is how the Tiger Cats are going to go?
I think from the outside, it's fair to assume that, but I've been around Scott Milanovich a lot. I was, my first full season covering the CFL. I covered a little bit in 2011, but the first full season I had was the 2012 Toronto Argonauts, who won the 100th Grey Cup, who were coached by Scott Milanovich. And I watched him keenly because I was learning so much about the league at a very intimate level very quickly. And I watched that entire camp when he had Ricky Ray and Chad Owens and Chad Cackard and Brandon Isaac, who's now the Ticats coach, like on and on and on. But the one thing that I watched very keenly with Coach Milanovich is details matter to him with everybody. Yeah, Ricky Ray was, and we know in this league quarterbacks are so important, but he wanted everybody to be on the same page in terms of their details, and that's very true. If you go to McMaster University during this preseason and this training camp, watching Scott Milanovich is like no time has passed. It's like those 10 years have not passed at all. But he's spoken about how condensed the CFL training camp schedule is and the preseason, that details matter, that mental reps matter. And Bo Levi Mitchell is taking that very seriously. Last year there was, I think, as much as we talked about the excitement and Bo arriving and that whole press conference that he had in the Ticats locker room and really embracing a new chapter in his career, I think now he has a different kind of perspective because I think he realizes that he only has so many games left, only so many snaps left, maybe not implying that he's not going to play this year, but that understanding of the present moment and what he has to do to continue to be successful, because he's still confident. He's still Bo Levi Mitchell. He's still the guy who knows that he can win, who is still the best winning percentage of any starting quarterback in CFL history. But he has said since 2018, he is starting to learn something new about who he is. And what that is the understanding that he's lost something. It's not a desire or confidence or a passion for the game, but it's maybe he's been trying to go ahead and get back this sense of, okay, you know what, I can be in the pocket and I can be in control of everything, because injuries, when they happen, especially to a player like that, it changes your perspective on the game. You're no longer the player that you think you can be or you want to be physically. And I watch Bo now, and I watch him in practice, and I see someone who is really looking at the details as Coach Milanovic wants him to do. But when you look at this entire team, they've got size, especially on offense. There's some big bodies there. They've had, as Scott Milanovic told us yesterday, they've had some small tissue injuries. James Butler was taking some time off to kind of to recover some soft tissue issues. But there is a lot of excitement, but not like last year. It was kind of nervous energy, like what's Bo going to do, and is Bo going to lead the Ticats to that long-awaited Grey Cup? Here it's, okay, you know what? We understand. We're listening to Coach Milanovic. We understand what's being expected of all of us. So I'm really interested to see how the Ticats get off this season, because last year it was certainly a disappointment, and Bo Levi Mitchell's groin injury, then his leg injury in Ottawa, and it really it was part of a season that Ticat fans will want to forget. But if he, by him I mean Bo Levi Mitchell, and Scott Milanovic can have the same kind of relationship that Scott Milanovic had with Ricky Ray, and Scott Milanovic had with Anthony Calvillo, and Scott Milanovic had with Blake Bortles in the NFL, that's only bred success, because anywhere that Scott Milanovic has coached, his team ends up winning.
From McMaster University, if you travel up Highway 6 to Guelph, Ontario, lie the Double Blue, the Toronto Argonauts. And before we look at...
It used to be Hamilton Tire Cats if you traveled by Highway 6 in that one season.
Well, that one horrible season up there. It actually was a good season in the way they played. The Grey Cup wasn't great, but boy, I hated it. There wasn't many of us that liked making that drive to that little tiny stadium. But we will see a preseason game there between the Tiger Cats and Argos in a week or so. You know, I hate hammering on Pinball Clements. It's so tough to do. But I have to raise the issue here. And everyone, it was a topic of discussion for, well over a couple of weeks. Did they drop the football in the way the Chad Kelly situation, from your perspective, you were at that press conference, did they drop the ball in the way they handled the Chad Kelly situation and ongoing legal issues, 9-game suspension? The rest is up to you.
From my personal perspective, having been around this league and feel lucky to call myself someone part of the wider CFL family, this is a different concept from the NFL. And I use that long preamble to say this. I think if the Argos could go back and do it again, Chad Kelly would not have been on that field for those first couple of days of training camp. Chad Kelly's his banner, the promotional banner that hangs in Alumni Stadium, would not be hanging there. And this isn't because we're trying to go ahead and pass some ultimate judgment on Chad Kelly. The league, in their thorough process through a third-party investigator, they passed what they felt was an appropriate punishment, and Chad Kelly will have the ability to appeal it. But to your point about that whole situation, I found it very odd. I have covered the Argos through a lot of situations when they were basically playing at Tim Hortons Field and TD Place in Ottawa as de facto home stadiums because they didn't have a home stadium situation. And Scott Milanovic had to deal with that through bad seasons of bad football. And then 3 Grey Cups in 12, 17, and 2022, which I know Ticat fans probably, given how sustained and consistent they have been in that time, it probably hurts a little bit, and justifiably so. But I look at that situation with Pinball, knowing what he has built in the community, especially in Toronto, not just Toronto, the wider CFL. It was a tough day for him, but it should justifiably have been a tough day because it's something that he has to face and the organization has to face, because they went ahead and made a decision back last year after a handful of games to hand Chad Kelly the richest contract currently in the Canadian Football League. And whatever opinion you have of Chad Kelly, of the situation, I'm going to say this was an avoidable situation. This was a situation that did not have to happen. And by that I mean, the Argos last year were a 16-2 team. They had built a culture that was a winning culture. And I imagine when they look back at this whole situation, they will want to look and say, as Pinball, I think one of the things that he quite rightly stated was, we're going to have to look back and look at what happened in our processes. And certainly that's not a satisfactory answer for the many people who watch and hear about this situation and justifiably become triggered about it because, harassment on any level is something that affects so many people. And when they see a situation where someone is given a platform like Chad Kelly, and certainly like Pinball Clemens, and they see them in front of the media and they feel like the answers are unsatisfactory, they have every right to feel the way they feel. And certainly people express their opinions about it. But being there, having been a part of this league, having been and seen so many things in the CFL, I've never seen anything like that. And I say, this is if this was the NFL and it was the NFL MVP and a similar situation had happened, I can tell you that team would have probably said that player should not be on the field. And I'm not doing the whole NFL CFL comparison thing, but this is the only argument that I make in terms of face of a league. And Chad Kelly should not have been out there that day. Whatever appeal process he's going to undergo, he can undergo and he can do through the pathways that are set out in the CBA agreed upon by the Players Association and the league. But at this point, when you're talking about public perception and not judgment, but just public perception about things that are going on, I think that the Argos and Pinball Clemens would probably do that day over again.
So on the field, I look at it in a couple of ways here. And I'm going to take it back to that failure in the East Final that blew us all away. Media booth,
I saw, Bubba.
We all couldn't. I was in the media booth, you on the field, the 26,000 that were there that were expecting a big party for a team, the Argo team, to go to the Grey Cup. Disappointed. The Chad Kelly situation, disappointed. Free agency, the Tiger Cats and many other teams scalp a lot of the Argos' top talent. What should be expected from the Double Blue this season?
It's a good question. I look at the whole East, and I look at an East where there's going to be a lot of parity, and really I think that's going to be true of the whole league. But I was just in Guelph today before they head to Montreal for the preseason game against the Alouettes, Grey Cup champion Alouettes, mind you. And I think about what I saw and what I saw after the game, which was a lot of the East Final. I saw people who were just shocked. And sometimes it happens where a team has a great regular season, they get to the playoffs, and then they just, Toronto Maple Leafs fans, raise your hands. But when you have a situation where clearly somebody, a star player, is underperforming, and then you come back and you have all the off-field issues that have arisen, it is tough on a training camp atmosphere. But I was just there today, and the Argos are incredibly positive. And I was speaking to Whit McManus, their all-star linebacker, who was very honest and said, "Listen, we addressed the situation in the locker room, and not addressed it in the sense of passing judgment on Chad Kelly, but addressed the overall feeling of what training camp should be, knowing the distractions and the outside noise that were kind of directed right at the Argos." And he was like, "Yeah, we've addressed it." And certainly, as we saw in the East Final, those things come out in the wash. I mean, how you perform is really the team that you are. But the Argos, especially their leadership group in that locker room, we're talking about Florian Arumbalade, we're talking about DeMonte Coxey, Sean Oakman, Winton McManus. That core group is still the same. And yes, they lost a lot of depth, particularly in the secondary. I mean, Jamal Peters is now a Ticat, loving being a Ticat. But the Argos have now had to reload and readjust, and they've just lost another member of their front office staff, and Vince Magri, who's now going to be a scout for the Buffalo Bills sometime in July before their training camp starts. So there's been so many things that have kind of subtracted away from the Argos and put them in a situation where they might appear to be on the back foot. However, they look pretty good. And this quarterback situation is going to be something they're going to have to kind of figure out, because right now, if things stand as they are, they will not have Chad Kelly until late into the season. I mean, half the season will be gone. So you're talking about Cameron Dukes, you're talking about Brian Scott, you're talking about Nick Arbuckle, who has come back, and Cameron Dukes certainly found himself in a situation in Winnipeg last year where we all thought it was going to be best on best, and then Chad Kelly sits, and all of a sudden it's Cameron Dukes in this cauldron that's in Winnipeg. And he said he learned a lot from that. He learned about preparation. He learned about pressure and expectation that were to come from a big game. That's only one game. I mean, mind you, Chad Kelly played in the Grey Cup and then was thrust into a starting situation. So the Argos have been in this kind of situation before, but how Ryan Dinwiddie manages that but really how this locker room manages those emotions that they've had all off season, from the disappointment in the East Final to everything that's happened leading up to this moment. That's going to define the Argos. But I can tell you from what I left today, there were dozens of players on the field doing extra work. And what McManus is telling me, I can see, which is this team is focused on this season, but we'll see how they play.
Stay tuned, folks. That's all we can really say. Stay tuned. And it is such a long season in the Canadian Football League where anything can happen, and there is always parity. And you know what we're going to be saying in September? The season doesn't start until Labor Day. Labor Day. No matter how important the games are in June, we never seem to really focus on that. Let's change gears here to another type of football that I know that you are a big fan of, and certainly are going to be one of the lead guys for TSN with. That's Canada Soccer. Again, we kind of talk about some troubles that the Argonauts have been going through. Canada Soccer are trying dearly to try and escape a cloud that they have been under. A new manager, new man running the program. Boy, they've got some real tough World Cup friendlies, and I don't know how friendly they're going to be there, Matt, but where are we? 2026 is still a ways away. What are you expecting from the Canada Men's Soccer Club?
Well, I can't wait. In about a week, I'm heading off to Europe, where they will face the Netherlands in Rotterdam, and then they will face France in Bordeaux. And this team has long wanted, speaking to the players I have, they've long wanted two things. One, they wanted a tactical identity that they could grow into. This is not saying that John Herdman didn't have an identity that he gave to the team. He clearly did. They did something that they hadn't done in a long time. But to be able to build off that World Cup, they needed, I think, a fresh voice. And I think the players acknowledge that now. And certainly John Herdman did, because he took the job with Toronto FC and pursuing what he feels is the next stage in his career. But the situations with the players, both the men's and the women's team, and their relationship with the CSA, the CSA's relationship with Canada Soccer Business, all of that has been noise that has clearly affected like the men's team. And Mauro Biello, who was the interim manager, said it when he selected the squad that was going to undertake the Copa America playoff against Trinidad and Tobago in Dallas, after they lost that game to Jamaica, a game they shouldn't have lost. That this team needed to reconnect with the pride of representing the country that they had shown the entire country, and really got the country on board when they went to the World Cup. Now, certainly we can dissect, what happened in 2022 in Qatar, and I was there, and the missed penalty against Belgium, and then absolutely getting a huge education from Croatia, to nearly coming back and tying against the World Cup, the eventual World Cup semifinalists in Morocco. But now we've entered a point where this team, all of that stuff doesn't matter, because they have a new coach in Jesse Marsh, who, for those who don't know, this is a guy who has coached in MLS. He's coached in Canada. He coached the Montreal Impact, who are now CF Montreal in their first year in MLS. He is somebody who has coached and won, a European league in Austria, has been a part of the Red Bull system, which in soccer terms is like, certainly we see what Manchester City is doing, and they have clubs all over the world. But the company that did that first, really, in the last 10, 15, 20 years is Red Bull. And what they did with New York Red Bulls, to what they've done at Salzburg, to what they've done at Leipzig in Germany. And Jesse Marsh has been in that system. So he has a way of playing an identity that he wants to see with this men's team. And he had a presentation with Kevin Blue, the general secretary, and many former players, including Atiba Hutchinson and Julian de Guzman, in which he had a presentation and said, the talent we have right now can do this. They can get to this level. And the second thing that this team has always wanted beyond a coach is to play the best opposition in the world. And it doesn't get much bigger and better than playing the Dutch before they go to the European Championships, and to play France, who are a favorite in the European Championships. And all this happens before they face Lionel Messi and the World Cup champions Argentina to open Copa America, which is the longest running continental international tournament in the world. So it feels overwhelming, because the World Cup is the World Cup, and nothing can top that. But Canada now knows that what it has in front of it are pivotal games. Friendlies, yes, but this Copa America tournament, in which they will play Argentina first, and then Peru, and then Chile, who are, maybe people don't know Peru and Chile on an international soccer level, but these are good sides and have very, very experienced teams. And the country's going to get an education in what South American soccer is, and it is life. It is everything. to the people and the players in those South American nations. So what's going to happen from now? I mean, only the players and Jesse Marsch will be able to kind of decide that. They're going to get a harsh education. I'm not saying that, by harsh, I mean, like, you're going to be playing in Rotterdam in an atmosphere that's different. You're going to be playing in Bordeaux against a team that has world-class players at every position. And then you're going to go face the greatest, a player widely considered to be the greatest player of all time, maybe in organized men's sports. And then you're facing the World Cup champions in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta with 75 to 80,000 Argentines who are very, very excited to show the world what it means to them to be the World Cup champions again in the tournament that they're also defending, which they won during the pandemic. That's a tall task for Canada. But speaking to all the players, as I do regularly, and I spoke to Jonathan Osorio last week, the Toronto FC captain, he had the biggest smile on his face going like, this is it. This is what we've always wanted. And they're going to get it. How they play is up to them, but this is going to be exciting. And this country is going to see this men's team is still looking for their signature moment. What it would mean for them to have something like that in Copa America could change everything ahead of 2026.
I'm gonna two things on that, and we had Arash Madani on here a couple of weeks ago, talking about some covering Canada Soccer's men's team in some hostile environments down in South America and Central America. So I'm just saying, for you, take care of yourself when you're in some of those hostile environments, because it sounds like it's a pretty scary assignment when you're down on the sideline and you're the guy from Canada. So please just take care of yourself.
Earplugs is the first thing. Earplugs is something I'm bringing with me because our day that day on June 20th is going to be huge. But I can echo those sentiments. I've covered Toronto FC in Monterrey and against Tigres and in an old stadium, El Volcan. There, it's crazy. I can't even. People don't understand what's coming, and I keep saying this, and I've said it over and over and over again. It's one of these things when you look to Copa America, what people are going to see Canada playing against, but the World Cup itself. Yeah, certainly this isn't San Pedro Sula in Honduras, where people are having bags of urine thrown at them, but this is still very much this is going to be intense. And I go back to what I was discussing with Jonathan Osorio, whose family comes from Colombia, who understands, who himself played South American soccer. This is a different level of passion. Certainly people, Leafs fans tie their hearts, they wear their hearts on their sleeves so much when it comes to hockey. This is different. This is like everything is the most important thing. The next thing is the most important thing. People were willing to sell their homes to go watch the World Cup final just to see the opportunity, not the guarantee, but the opportunity to watch their team potentially win a World Cup title. And they're the defending World Cup champions. And if you want a sense of what it means, just watch the Argentine men's team and how they couldn't even hold a parade because there were so many millions of people in Buenos Aires who wouldn't even allow the team bus, people hanging off of highway overpasses. Like it was crazy. So that's what Canada is about to face. That's what this country's getting an education. And really, this is perfect because it's going to allow not just the passionate soccer fans, which are there, who know what's coming, who understand what this sport means to the world on such a grand scale. The typical Canadian fans, and we've had millions of them who watch the men's team at the World Cup in 2022. They're going to see what it means, and maybe that'll inspire so many in Toronto and Vancouver when the men's team comes and hosts the 2026 World Cup, because this is once in a lifetime stuff.
You just brought up Lionel Messi's name, and I'm gonna leave you on this one here, because it's a situation. Like, let's be honest, it's a situation right now, and it well can happen in Toronto when Miami come to Toronto. Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Busquets not playing in Vancouver. About 54,000 are expected at BC Place, an all-time record. This has been sold out for months. They're not even coming to Vancouver, and people are not happy. Media, fans. How do the MLS sculpt this situation? I know in the NBA we deal with load management, and that's generally one or two players. People came to see Lionel Messi and may never see him ever in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. then I see it from two perspectives. The fan perspective is, this is why Messi is here. Messi is here to pull people into Major League Soccer. Because the fact of the matter is this: Major League Soccer has come leaps and bounds. I started covering the league in 2007 when Toronto FC first entered Major League Soccer. It is a completely different league from what it was back then. And I'm not going to disparage the league or downplay it or rank it next to the top 5 years. No, I'm not going to do that. But I will say that part of Lionel Messi coming here was to create momentum to launch Major League Soccer into a different conversation. Not simply with fans in the stands and the power of Messi, but to convince other players that, like, wow, he's here. And it's certainly happening. Olivier Giroud played for AC Milan, is now going to be playing for LAFC. So that trickle continues to happen. And the development of players, young players, watching Lionel Messi. I mean, I walk in Toronto, I live in Liberty Village, as I say, and I've seen tons of Inter Miami jerseys on young boys and girls. So that will pay off down the road. But fans want to see him because he's chosen to play here. That's the fan side of it, and their frustrations are completely legitimate. There's another side of it, which is buyer beware. This is still a competitive league. He's not on a friendly tour. And if he is chosen that he doesn't want to play, although yes, there is artificial turf not only in Vancouver but in Seattle, which is one of the best teams, one of the most established teams in MLS. But he has chosen not to play there. And the one thing I will say, not to justify what Lionel Messi has done, but one thing for people to kind of, acutely understand, he's 36 years old, and he's at a point where he has said publicly, if I cannot contribute to a team, then I'm not gonna play. He still feels he can. Clearly he can, because Miami are one of the best teams in the league, and they're angling towards, certainly we're very early in the season, but they're angling towards a super prominent place in the Eastern Conference, and the Supporters' Shield, as the regular season champion is called. But this is still a competitive season, and he is still a 36-year-old, once in a generation, once in a lifetime talent who's managing his body and his expectations. And Tata Martino, the head coach of Inter Miami, has certainly, I imagine, worked on a plan with Lionel Messi and pointed out games where, because the travel is unlike anything that happens in professional soccer. There is no league in the world, maybe the Russian Premier League, but nobody's watching that right now. There is such a demand on a player's body, and Wayne Rooney talked about this. You could be playing in Cincinnati one day, and then you're flying to Seattle, and then the next week you're flying to Nashville, and then it is grueling. It is a long season from February all the way to November if you get to the MLS Cup. So I will file this, understanding both sides of the argument. I'll file this under, this is a competitive league. Inter Miami's a very good team, and yeah, it certainly hurts when it is Busquets and Suarez and Jordi Alba on top of Lionel Messi. But this is just professional sports, and it's unfortunate. There is nothing on your ticket, unfortunately, that guarantees you to see the great stars of the league. Injuries can happen all the time, and players can choose, because it is still a competitive league, to play and to not play. And we've seen that with Steph Curry, as you say. We've seen it with LeBron James. And this is just a fact. And I feel for Vancouver fans. But the one thing I will say is, they are also not to go ahead and make them feel any better, but they're also going to get the opportunity to see Canada host 2 World Cup games. And BC Place has seen a Women's World Cup final. So not saying they'll be all right, but certainly this hurts, but there are still big things ahead at BC Place coming up in the next few years.
Matt, it's getting to that. We kind of had like that off season, didn't get to see you much, but we are getting close to the Canadian Football League season kicking off, and certainly looking forward to chatting with you more on the sidelines and seeing you at Tim Hortons Field. It's a big year in Hamilton, 25 years. We're hoping for that Grey Cup. I don't know, should I call it a jinx? Certainly want it to be over, but no, you'll be a big part of it on the TSN broadcast. And again, love what you're doing with the soccer as well, too. That's going to be such a fun thing, not just for regional areas like Hamilton or Toronto or Vancouver, but for the entire country to cover, and you'll be right at the pinnacle of it. So we certainly look forward to your work as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and I tell you, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you.
Talk to you soon, Bubba. Thanks for this, my friend.
All right, take care of yourself. Hey, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if you do know of an athlete, team, or individual that deserves a platform, the Sportsline podcast want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you do have something to say, I'd love you to comment. And if you may, check out all of the informative podcasts CHCH have to offer, like Trending Now and Newsmakers. For the amazing folks that make the Sportsline podcast possible, merci beaucoup. And we'll see you next week.